Ladies and gentlemen, we're running off schedule, hence we're beginning the next session immediately. I'd like to call on stage the chair and moderator for the next event, Dr. Ishrat Hussain. The speakers, Mr. Harun Sharif, Mr. Khalid Mansoor, Ms. Mahin Rahman, and Mr. Ishaq Berni, to conduct the panel discussion, Why Don't People Invest in Pakistan? We're connected virtually to Ms. Mahin Rahman and Mr. Berni? Mr. Ishaq Berni. Okay. I'll start introducing the panelists, and meanwhile we'll connect. We're on a clock because we have an online session at 2, so we have to end this session, and I'd really request the panelists to help us achieve our deadline of 1:15 p.m. The chair for this session is Dr. Ishrat Hussain. Dr. Ishrat Hussain was the advisor to the Prime Minister on institutional reforms and austerity with the status of federal minister, and led the government efforts to reform the civil services and restructure the federal government. In this capacity, he also served as the member of National Economic Council, EC&EC, Economic Coordination Committee of the Cabinet, and several other cabinet committees. The moderator for this session is Mr. Harun Sharif. Mr. Sharif is a well-known global expert of regional economic dynamics, international development, economic diplomacy, financial markets. He served as the Minister of State and Chairman of Pakistan's Board of Investment in 2018 and 19. He remained Pakistan's lead representative for industrial cooperation in the Joint Cooperation Committee of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the CPEC. Mr. Khalid Mansoor is a graduate in chemical engineering with distinction and honors. He has been the Chief Executive Officer of HUBCO, the first and largest independent power producer in Pakistan. Since May 2013, the company generates approximately 10% of the country's electricity and is a leading private sector player in addressing the energy crisis currently being faced by Pakistan. Ms. Mahin Rahman was appointed the Chief Executive Officer of Infra Zameen Pakistan in 2021 and has played a crucial part in setting up IZP's base operations and its initial structure. Ms. Rahman has over 20 years of experience in investment banking, research, and asset management. Our last panelist, Mr. Ishaq Berni, is the Managing Director of Policy, Strategy and Relations and Chief Legal Officer of the Astana Financial Services Authority. Ishaq Berni specializes in creating financial center ecosystems in emerging economies. His over 2 decades of experience spans legislation development, disputes, corporate and regulatory law in Australia and the Middle East across all facets of corporate, investment, and financial services transactions and regulations. I would like to welcome all honorable guests on behalf of PIDE, PSDE, and BUITEMS.
We have decided as a group is for Mr. Harun Sharif to act as the moderator and ask a set of questions to all the panelists, and then open it up to the audience, because we want to listen to you. The conference can only be useful when it is a two-way street rather than a one-way direction. So we are deviating from the normal pattern, and we want your input. So last half an hour of this session would be devoted to your question and answers. Please ask questions, but do not make long speeches, because that will take away the whole thrust of this format. So without much ado, I would like Mr. Harun Sharif to begin with his opening remarks and then try to moderate the session by asking questions from the panelists. Mr. Harun Sharif.
The topic today is investment, productivity, and employability. So at the time, it's a kind of a time where people are consolidating economies, and Pakistan is no different. We have, a lower GDP growth based projection of 2.2% for this year. So we need to work in this environment. Since the overarching topic is Charter of Economy, so I will start with a little lighter note. A few months back, somebody high in the power approached me, and they said that somehow all political parties can talk to you. So can you quietly speak to them about Charter of Economy? So I said, sure, but where is Charter of Economy? So they basically looked at me, they said, there's no Charter of Economy. So I said, what am I going to talk about if you don't even have a white paper or a piece of paper? So thank you, Dr. Nadeemul Haq and PIDE, for at least having this Charter of Economy paper, which people can debate and talk about. The point I'm trying to make is that we need to look at some evidence. We need to learn from our failures, other successes, and come up with, some kind of an agenda to have a dialogue. A dialogue just to have a social talk does not necessarily lead to outcomes which one is looking for. Few words on investors. With my experience, investors are looking for 4 or 5 things. It's a very competitive environment. We have heard about examples of Vietnam, Cambodia, Bangladesh. First and foremost, and that is where I would also say that now the private investors in China and others, that is a policy which prefers investment, a policy which is competitive, policy consistency. Please, today I'm going to talk about that with panelists. Do we have institutional capability to keep anything consistent? That's a question which all of us need to reflect. So they look at policy, they look at consistency. The infrastructure, we are obsessed with economic zones and others. Infrastructure in the pie of investment climate has little space, important space, but it's not the thing. Let me give you statistics. Almost 50% of specialized economic zones fail because people only focus on a wall and land. You don't focus on making enabling economic zones to attract investment. Investors look at dispute resolution. We need to look at our judicial system. We spoke about RACODEC and others yesterday. Do we have a system to actually, deal with commercial disputes? More importantly, a mindset that welcomes investors. And that's where, before I finish and call the speakers, we have a history of missed opportunities. And the fundamental thing which stops us from bringing investment to Pakistan is the mindset which is not welcoming and open to investors. We have tried to solve our economic issues from debt and bargains done on our geopolitical positioning. I think all of us need to ponder, is that the way forward? That just because of our geopolitical positioning, we ask for some money or handouts or bailouts, or we want to now move towards a dignified, competitive economy which can actually attract people on its own. Now that's a question I would leave to all of you. Now with these some words, missed opportunities. You will remember that when I was part of the team with Prime Minister Imran Khan, we went to Saudi Arabia, we came up with a $21 billion package. We announced it, okay? We went to Qatar, and the Amir of Qatar came, another 10 billion commitment to invest in Pakistan. China was already investing. Malaysian, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad came here, showed keen interest. The point I'm trying to make is that we have been successful in giving the message that Pakistan has the potential and we are open for business. Today we are going to talk about it, that why can't we do that business? We are open, but are we ready for business? And this is what I think we should honestly talk about to ourselves, that are we really ready for business? Why don't all these big, tall commitments basically materialize in Pakistan? And Balochistan has a very special place for today's discussion because the commitments I'm talking, almost 30% of these were aimed at Balochistan. So we will try and unpack that why we couldn't do it. So it's the question of why from the first panel where the question of no. Now I'm moving to question of why and how to move positively forward. So with these words, the order is, I've been told that we've been cut short by 15 minutes. So we have about 75 minutes, 1 hour, 15 minutes. I would like to keep each speaker with questions for 5 to 7 minutes, so that in 30 minutes we can actually get answers from our worthy speakers. Then we'll open up the floor for 30 minutes for debate with the audience, and then I'll request the chair, Dr. Ishrat, to give his closing words. So with this, I would like to basically invite, the first speaker, which is Mr. Khalid Mansoor. He has been introduced. He has vast experience of corporate sector. He also remained, for 6 months or so,
Sir, 9 months.
9 months or so, as Special Assistant to Prime Minister on CPEC affairs. So he brings public policy, because now he's part of a very large advisory firm of power sector in the UK. So he, with this kind of experience, so let me start, with Khalid. The first question I would pose for the audience, that you have spent almost all of your life in corporate sector, okay? So is our corporate sector really growing, or is our corporate sector focusing on the areas of productivity and employment? And certain, a little provocative question, why can't Pakistan, we see Angros and Hubcos where you have been associated. None of these companies have tried to set up operations cross-border or trying to bring a multinational. We see Tatas and Birlas and others. So let me start with corporate sector. Do you think corporate sector, private sector is a success? Is it stagnant? Or where is it heading? Let's start with that.
Arun, thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a great pleasure to be in Quetta. And I relate with Balochistan quite a bit because my last assignment has been in Hubco, and Hubco is the company which is in Balochistan. Well, I have spent almost 28 years part of Exxon to begin with, and then Angro, and then about a year working in Africa, and then, headed Hubco for almost 8 years. Harun, the question is very pertinent, and I will give some actual experiences while working in Angro. Angro was Exxon, and Exxon was one of the biggest giant, I would say, globally, and they set up the fertilizer business in Pakistan. So when the fertilizer business started, they had almost 90% share, but their share kept on reducing, and they did not expand their investment in Pakistan. Finally, they decided to divest out of Pakistan, and they offered the opportunity to employees to buy that company and then, start the operation of fertilizer. So that was probably one of the biggest success story of employee-led buyout. And this company became Angro, and thereafter there has been a huge investment by the private sector, and I will very, very quickly, engage the youngsters because it is all about mindset. Part of huge global organization is good, but you are kind of shackled. But employees, when they were helm of the affairs, now Angro is a multi-product company. When Exxon left, it was only 268,000 tons of urea, and we needed to grow. So the employees came up with an outstanding idea, perhaps for the first time in the world, and that is what you see the intellect capacity of Pakistani workforce was concerned. We chose global world-scale plant, one in the US and one in the UK, and decided to dismantle, relocate, reconstruct in Pakistan, and in one attempt at a 33% of the cost, 1/3 of the timeline, the production capacity of urea was increased from 268,000 tons to 600,000 tons. And thereafter, multiple growth, initiatives were taken, and the capacity was taken to 1 million. Now company was prosperous. When it became prosperous, then the world scale investment was done in fertilizer sector of $1.2 billion of investment, and that is where the production capacity went to about 2.5. Now, employees were engaged, and that is what you see. I was hearing loud and clear what Dr. Nazim said, that with the engagement, with the cross-section of the employees, the question was asked where they would like to see the company 5 years, 10 years down the road. This is what is called the vision. And the dream was then envisaged, and employees said, we would like to be a diversified company. And thereafter, if you know Engro now, you know, they are into foods, they are into petrochemical, they are into infrastructure, they are into information technology. And the last project which was I involved, and this is one of the most passionate thing, was that Engro diversified into energy and power, and the writing was on the wall at that particular point in time that country is going to be plunged in darkness because we have not really developed our indigenous resource, which was Thar. $175 billion of investment, but nothing was coming about. So again, it's a long story, but since time is of the essence, a first time public-private partnership was developed. And that was that Engro will manage and government of Sindh will invest. And based on that, you see the huge investment, which was about $2 billion, that was made in Thar. Mashallah, now the mine is up and running, and there are 3 plants which are there based on the indigenous fuel, which was the need of the hour, rather than based on our energy needs on the imported fuel. And now I can tell you, as part of my responsibility at CPEC, that Thar promises the energy security of the country, because there is so much coal over there, we can produce a couple of 100,000 of power over there, and now based on that coal, we can go into gasification, which is going to be then giving us opportunity to have the petrochemical products, etc. So that was the story of investment and, you know, the thinking out of box and feeling empowered, and that is what Engro was all about. Now, coming to HUBCO, HUBCO was, you see, one of the largest IPP, but only 1600 megawatt. But when the CPEC was envisaged, and you know, I feel honored, I was part of the team which went to China, and we envisaged that what should be the framework of CPEC, and we realized that China wanted to have a quid pro quo, because they're willing to help us in really alleviating the power crisis, but at the same time, they wanted the connectivity from Xinjiang province all the way to Gwadar. And that is a separate area. We will cover that, what we have accomplished in that one. However, with that initiation, HUBCO decided, you're talking about investment of private sector, that we want to grow. We would like to be the, you know, biggest company. Envision was that we would have almost, you know, 10,000 of megawatt. So within a period of 8 years, huge transformation of HUBCO has taken place. And now the production capacity of HUBCO is almost close to 4,000 megawatt in less than 8 years. And the biggest investment was in Balochistan, and that was the first under the CPEC, which was $2 billion imported coal, and the only joint venture between China and Pakistan. And now the Thar is growing, and Thar capacity was developed, and you know, HUBCO took the equity over there, and 2 power plants had already been set up, and third will be coming very soon. So answer to your question is that as long as you have the vision and then you have the strategy, so there is no reason why the, you know, private sector should be able to grow. But I would like to conclude by saying that in my humble opinion, and having seen the public sector very closely, I think the biggest investment should be possible with public-private partnership, because corporate sector would not have that kind of muscle. The Thar would not have developed, because, you know, at least close to $1 billion investment was done by the public sector, which is transmission line, which is, you know, road network, the effluent disposal system, the airport, and so on and so forth. But
come back to you in the next when we talk about the hindrances and then Balochistan. But with that, are we connected to Maheen Rahman?
Yes, I'm there.
Acha. Ji Maheen, welcome to the conference virtually. It would have been wonderful if you were here physically. But Maheen Rahman is CEO of InfraZamin. But with her experience in, you know, financial sector plays a huge role in, you know, basically complementing or promotion of investment. There are questions, for instance, in Balochistan, why don't we have a development bank looking at Balochistan, So the money, indigenous, we always look outside, as, Dr. Nadimul Haq and others alluded to. But Maheen, first question to you is, in the earlier session we heard that stock market is not delivering. So I would like you to actually respond that is stock market really doing what it should be doing in terms of capital formation or reaching out or giving savings products, or is it just a trading house of a few, as mentioned, dominated by Sindh Club in the first, session? So over to you, Mahi.
Thank you, Haroon, and thank you for the toughest question, I think, of the day. कि हमारी stock market क्यों नहीं हिलती है? Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I wish I could be there in person. However, I think main issue to ये है कि when we look at the stock market, हम सोचते हैं कि yes, it's a collection of smaller people, smaller investors, larger investors that have really kind of monopolized the market. Reality ye hai that if we look at the stock market performance and we sort of eliminate the overall index for a bit, what you will find is there are a few companies, I would say gems, that have actually seen a tremendous increase in their value over the last, say, 6 or 7 years or so. And as an investor, it is my fundamental belief that jahan value addition ho rahi hoti hai, wahan investment zarur aati hai. I think I can just quickly take maybe 2 companies that have sort of bucked the trend. Hamari market 2016 mein takriban 46,000 ke level mein thi. Aaj 2022 mein hum 42,000 ke level pe struggle kar rahe hain. तो market तो overall तो decline में गई है. लेकिन उसमें अगर आप देखें कोई ऐसी कंपनीज हैं जिन्होंने एक्चुअली वैल्यू क्रिएशन की है, वैल्यू एडिशन की है, बिजनेस को एक्सपैंड किया है, अपने आप में इन्वेस्ट किया है, अपने लोगों में इन्वेस्ट किया है, and they have seen that result both in their bottom line as well as in their share price performance. One of those, for example, is Mizan Bank, which is now the country's 3rd or 4th largest bank. लेकिन इनकी जो जर्नी रही है पिछले 6 साल में आप उठाएं तो शायद ये नंबर 9 या नंबर 10 थे in terms of banking. लेकिन उन्होंने एक growth strategy adopt की, Islamic banking पे focus किया, अपने overall deposits को बढ़ाया, अपनी lending को बढ़ाया, and the market rewarded them from that. Back in 2015, 2016, शायद Mizan Bank की share price तकरीबन 80 rupees थी, 50 rupees थी. वो 50 रुपए से अब लेके I think just crossed over 200, and that in a time जहाँ market decline कर रही है. Similarly, आप Systems Limited को उठाएं. Systems Limited is an IT firm, an area जहाँ पे पाकिस्तान ने actually काफी growth देखी है. So Systems was about 80 rupees, I would say 4-5 years ago. Today again, it touched 700 rupees at the peak. So I think as investors, जो major point होता है as an investor कि आप value addition देखते हैं. और अगर बाकी कंपनीज ने ये नहीं परफॉर्मेंस दी है तो वो तो स्टॉक मार्केट इंडेक्स पे तो रिफ्लेक्ट होगा. लेकिन सवाल ये होना चाहिए कि why have some companies outperformed in terms of delivery of value addition versus other companies and industries that have been at a standstill or a decline. And शायद this is the main point here कि हमारे पाकिस्तान में बहुत सारे ऐसे business houses हैं, industries हैं that work on concessions or advantages received from the government of Pakistan. And in doing so, they adopt a more rent-seeking model rather than a model of value addition. And that is the primary reason where the market or investors do not reward them. And this is really when we talk about a charter of economy and we talk about policy consistency, these are areas we have to focus on कि जहाँ हम rent-seeking देख रहे हैं industry में, उसको हम किस तरह eliminate करें and move our businesses and our corporate sector towards value addition and growth rather than simply looking at it from a baseline कि किसको क्या advantage दिया, किसको क्या advantage नहीं मिला. And I think यही चीज जो है ये investors actually recognize करते हैं चाहे वो stock market में हो या फिर private investors हो.
बहुत शुक्रिया जी, thank you. Is Ishaq Bernie connected?
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
जी, wonderful to have you, Ishaq साहब. आपसे तो पहला सवाल जो है ना बड़ा सीधा सा है. Now coming from that, in few minutes, 3-4 मिनट में आप हमें ये बताइए कि ये जो आप फाइनेंशियल सेंटर बनाते फिर रहे हैं, कभी कतर में, कभी आस्ताना में, यहाँ पर हम लोग तो हमारे ब्यूरोक्रेट्स और हमारी मिनिस्ट्रियां ये सारा काम खुद से कर रही हैं. What is this financial center and what is it doing in Qatar and Astana? Just tell us in very simple words, then we'll move to.
Sure. Thank you very much, sir. So, thank you very much for inviting me. Always a pleasure to actually, speak in any conference in my country of origin. Unfortunately, I became an international export of Pakistan. Human resources is one of our biggest exports. And that does actually lead to perhaps more investments for Pakistan than many institutional investors perhaps lead to. And I'm not just talking in terms of the mere effect of, people sending remittances back or investing personally. It is also that, in the many institutions and organizations that we work in, we act very much as ambassadors, and it is very much close to our heart. And there's many ways that, we can influence or perhaps inform people in making more informed decisions in regards to investments in Pakistan. Jahan tak sawal hai sir ki ye international financial center wali kahani, so I'd just like to tell the story. There is, I trained as a regulator in Australia, and then at that point in time, the Middle East was getting the idea that because they have many inherent inefficiencies in their economies. And the one way to fix that is to undertake large-scale reform, something that is very close to perhaps Ishrat Saab's heart, and basically fundamentally reform the principal economy. Or if you admit that that will take perhaps a longer time and perhaps a more sustainable effort as well, there is an alternative path, and that alternative path is to build an overlay on the inherent inefficiencies of the system and build a front end. So when we look at Pakistan, perhaps the Board of Investment is one institution that was meant to do that. You yourself have led that institution, and I think you're very familiar with the kind of challenges that you can face in terms of what exactly is your mandate, how much power you have to actually change things. So I ended up going to Qatar and working on creating something called the Qatar Financial Center. It happens to be one of the very well recognized financial centers in the world. Now it has contributed immensely, even a country which fundamentally does not advocate FDI into the country like Qatar, unfortunately, it's when I name those numbers and tenfold investment into Qatar in a country like Pakistan, it doesn't present a very good story. So then, about 2 years ago, Kazakhstan, again, a country that has many inherent problems, some of the indices in this country also compared to some of the indices that, Pakistan ranks at that level. And they also decided that, what we will do is build a financial center to basically energize and help the investors come into the country. And when we talk of a financial center, what are we really talking about? So not to bore people, but, Nadeem Saab, I know is a big fan of Paul Romer. And what he used to advocate in my very gulabi English is that कि आपने जहां अच्छे systems और regulations बनाए और उनको आपने observe किया, तो उनमें automatically जो like resources or investments हैं, वो automatically flow कर देती हैं from places who haven't been able to do that. So I think I have lived the Paul Romer story from my experiences. And if you create a financial center, which is based on English common law, which seems to be the language and the legislation that is used primarily in the majority of the financial transactions of the world, you create a court system, which is parallel to your state system. Then that system, is equipped with judges of international repute. In fact, Qatar had the former Chief Justice of England and Wales, Lord Wolfe, as its Chief Justice. He then came to Kazakhstan to also set up the courts and hold them here. And Lord Mance, who's now the President of the Court of Appeals of England, is now currently, used to be the former President of the Court of Appeals, is now the Chief Justice here. It gives comfort to investors that should things not work out, there is somebody who is actually looking after their interests. Then you also need to create like an alternative dispute resolution system and your legislation, which is based on international standards in that regard as well. So that is the hub.
I will intervene time ki wajah se. Could you just let us know the number of companies which Qatar and Astana has attracted? We'll come back to you again with more details.
Sure, sir. So Abhi, currently in its 3 years of operations, 2 years spent in pandemic, and we have over 1,500 firms present here, which also includes the likes of Chevron, etc., and their direct investment funds, over 20 investment funds, 20 asset managers, banks, insurance companies. I mean, it is basically a reformative project for the entire sector. And that is just in 3 years currently here.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll get back to you. One of the key message of the first set of questions is coming that investors are looking at a space where they feel comfortable doing business. And my humble experience is that government is not that space. That is why countries are creating. There is a Dubai International, DIFC, Financial Center. Qatar followed. Now Kazakhstan, people are creating a space. Jo maine pehle projects ki baat ki thi, Saudi and other, they got basically dead in the ministries. If we create a space where professionals can deliver, they work 24/7. The law of the land, in fact, what Mr. Bernie is saying, does not apply to these financial centers for disputes. They work under international law so that investors feel comfortable. So this is something we need to think. कि हम ये बाका चीफ सेक्रेटरी साहब के ऑफिस के या कोर कमांडर के ऑफिस के या लाइन मिनिस्ट्री से काम करना चाहते हैं या हम एक प्रोफेशनल ट्रेंड की तरफ जाना चाहते हैं जहां इन्वेस्टर्स कंफर्टेबल फील करते हैं. That's the message I wanted to give. Now getting back to, we have only 15 minutes left, so a couple of minutes to Mr. Khalid Mansoor. Khalid, after COVID, the global investment levels have gone to $1.5 trillion. Pakistan is less than basically $2 billion a year. Now, you pointed out that how companies invested where you've been involved in. Tell us 3 big hurdles. Is it politicians, bureaucrats, mindset, or something else? What is stopping us from getting this investment? Very focused.
Yeah, well, within 1 minute or 1.5 minutes. Look, you see, I will give the practical example. When I was inducted as an advisor to the Prime Minister and looking after the CPEC. Well, first of all, there's a lot of misperception or perception-based assessment what CPEC was all about. But let me give you some good news as well, that phase 1 of CPEC has been over, which has brought almost $25 billion of investment in this country. 5,000 megawatt is up and running, 3,500 megawatt will be up and running in next 6 to 8 months, and 4,000 megawatt is still in the pipeline, which will happen. Infrastructure, then, Matiari Lahore transmission line for the first time in the, optical fiber and so on and so forth. I think the main reason when I started, I was engaged that now the phase 2 of CPEC has to happen. What is CPEC phase 2? It is all about the industrialization. So there are 11 joint working groups, and the way the platform work or the network work, that the bureaucracy of Pakistan and bureaucracy of China, they must engage and discuss that in variety of sectors, which projects are to be implemented. Okay. So there are 11, and the latest one was science and technology, agriculture and IT, and huge, potential in that one. And once the agreement is made in those 11 joint working groups, the final ratification is done by JCC, the Joint Coordination Committee. So my job was to now make all those projects happen, which is part of the phase 2. And that is the only hope to bring the industrialization in the country. So when I started to interact with the ministries, that look, each ministry has got, let's say, 8 to 10 projects. So my interaction with the minister and the secretary and the staff please let me know where is the plan, where you will take these agreed projects into execution. To my surprise, there has not been an iota of work in all those projects. So that is where, the main issue was. Now, the areas where the investors are already working, they have so many bruises. They have got so many pain points. I will just give a couple of examples. Timing is short. That when I went to, Allama Iqbal Special Economic Zone, so I realized that there was almost $1.5 billion on investment from the small investors. They are into LD Berg, they're into tiles, they're into, other various small kind of businesses. But they were all bruised because they said that they have been really moving from pillar to the post, and they had number of problems. And to my, utter surprise, if any investor has to make a business plan implemented, there are 38 provincial and the federal approvals or NOCs which are required.
So sludge.
So that was approval, which was given to the Prime Minister, and he agreed that rather than approval kind of environment, it should be a kind of audit environment, that the investor comes, he should be treated with a one window operation, and he should not be running from pillar to the post to get the NOCs and the approvals. And the only thing is that you have an undertaking from them that they should be, complied with the law of the land. And subsequently, there should be an audit, and they are non-compliant, there should be a penalty thing. And once, you started to interact with all those investors, I'm talking about small investors, honest to God, I tell you that, very, very quickly, they said they are going to be doubling their investment, particularly in, textile sector. Last experience that when I went with the Prime Minister to China, first of all, we have been going to these countries without zero preparation. So first of all, what was done, that we developed a competitive and comparative analysis, that when we go to China, we tell them that what we bring to the table, what country really offers, rather than just saying our friendship is higher than Himalaya, deeper than Arabian Sea, and sweeter than honey. So those competitive and comparative analysis were done, and there were 20 meetings which were chaired by the Prime Minister, and those meetings were held with the Fortune 500 companies in variety of sectors: agriculture, IT, textile, pharmaceutical.
But what's the hurdle?
No, just when we came back, there was an endorsement of, honest to God, I'm telling you, $44 billion for investment in these variety of sectors. The moment we came back, and the main thing was, they said they did not want to waste the time because of all those, approval processes. And that is where Prime Minister promised them. And then as soon as the execution process started, unfortunately, we were back to square one, and all those investors right now on the back burner. And I am still connected with the Chinese. They want stability. They want, not wastage of their time. And if Pakistan has to offer them opportunities other than the alternate destination, what Harun mentioned, Cambodia, Vietnam and Bangladesh, there's an excellent opportunity for Pakistan, because in China, labor-intensive industry has become unviable. They are relocating their industry, and Pakistan gave much more comparative edge. If we clean our house, if we clean our house and we provide conducive environment for the facilitation of these investors, I tell you, that's the silver lining, that inshallah, Pakistan will get the industrialization, and 3 key objectives will be achieved: import substitution, export orientation, and employment, which is in line with your.
Thank you, Khalid. Very kind, very clear message. In the bureaucratic system, the questions of competence and follow-up. In the overall system, basically, the capacity to structure projects and, bring investors in, that's where
we should be implementation.
The implementation competence, I'm saying, that we really don't have. And that basically, please, think about that we try and do very large projects because politicians like it,
Exactly.
But do we really have the competence to actually manage those transactions? We need to invest in that. Getting back to Maheen, I hope you are still connected. That raises the question, Maheen, of development financing. ये project financing का पैसा कहाँ से आएगा? देखिए, in Pakistan, I understand lots of people, what we talk about, people are investing in gold, people are investing in real estate, people are investing in dollars. there is no investment going in projects which actually resonate to the theme of this conference. Productivity, enhancement, employability, exports. So Maheen, my question is, in the current financial sector, what is the risk appetite for project finance, particularly in areas like Balochistan? Or should we go back to the old model of development financial institutions, which are dedicated to that, but not state-run? So basically, your view of the financial sector's capability to, leverage investments.
Okay, thank you, Harun. And I think that's the key point as well that I will make here, is that the reason people take gold and real estate and invest in land and these assets is simply because financing for project finance or financing for development is very difficult to get in Pakistan. A simple example is really focused on the kind of risk that a bank is willing to take. Bank के अंदर बहुत focus होता है collateralized lending पे, और बहुत कम focus होता है cash flow based lending पे. और project finance जो हम कहते हैं, whether it is an investment in irrigation project or a water project or even a digital project, requires a deep analysis in terms of is business की viability क्या है और इसके cash flows क्या होंगे. And a bank, instead of assessing those risks, focuses much more on value of the land, value of the collateral, value of the plant and machinery, which are important, but in all situations may not be sufficient to convince the bank to lend towards that particular project. So I think this is where the market failure exists. And this is where, as Infrazamin, we have been trying to close that gap by providing the financial sector with comfort in the form of guarantees towards project finance solutions. A simple example I will give you is recently we financed or enabled a financing of a digital infrastructure project, which was all across Pakistan for fiber optic layout, internet access, as well as SME and commercial internet connectivity. And we did that by providing a guarantee, which then enabled the company to raise approximately $10 million from the country's largest bank. Now, इस situation में reality ये है कि बैंकों के पास liquidity बहुत है, capital markets में भी liquidity बहुत है, लेकिन कोई risk लेने को तैयार नहीं है. तो हमें ऐसे innovative financial solutions लाने हैं जो not only look to develop the project, but else also then look to provide comfort to the local market to finance these projects. I think हमारी आदत थोड़ी यही रही है कि हम बाहर से पैसा ढूंढते हैं, लेकिन reality ये है कि बाहर से पैसा आए क्यों अगर we ourselves as Pakistanis and as Pakistani financial institutions are not willing to invest in the project ourselves. So इस gap को close करने के लिए we need better solutions. Some of those can be in the form of obviously guarantees that Infrazamin is doing, but other solutions as well in terms of how to develop the project to make it commercially viable, which will then enable a bank, a local bank, to lend to it and release the capital formation that way. ये चीजें काफी जरूरी हैं if we want to create a financial system that looks towards risk sharing, risk taking, rather than simply taking deposits from the public and investing it, the vast majority of it, in government securities. So I think Hamara, as an economy and as a financial system, our ability to take risk, to understand risk, and to take calculated risk certainly has to go up quite tremendously.
Thank you very much. Very clear. I think Khalid Mansoor has a quick comment on that. After that, I'll go to Mr. Bernie and ask him.
Harun, in the audience, I am advising a project, another project, 330 megawatt, which is going to be, inshallah, implemented in Thar. The balance sheet, the financial agreement has been made. It's a consortium of all the leading banks, like, Mizan, like National Bank of Pakistan, like you see Bank Al-Falah, Bank of Punjab, etc., etc. $100 million will come through an offshore line, which is being done through UBL, right? And the remaining, you see, the foreign exchange component is going to be, $200 million, $500 million project. Now, we are very close to have the financial close. It's a, project financing. But what is the main hurdle? That even if the financial close is taking place, the first step is that you need to make payment to the EPC contractor. LCs are not being established. And there is a $100 million gap which has to be approved by State Bank of Pakistan. So that is the meeting 2 weeks ago I had with the, the governor, and I said this is a project of national importance because we need to have more power generation based on indigenous fuel. So there is a lot of reluctance at the moment from the sponsors that if we have done anything and somehow they are not able to really have the LCs established, then that is going to be bringing a kind of showstopper.
Thank you very much. I think the message is quite clear that the risk appetite needs to be reviewed, as Maheen is saying, but also hurdles because of our macroeconomic, fault lines, which you are mentioning, that central bank is not. In fact, when I was chairman board of investment, my biggest complaint from my company's foreign investors was they could not repatriate money. And that is something, agar wo apna profit ya paise bhej nahi pa rahe, dividend nahi bhej pa rahe, so basically why should they invest more? तो ये सवालात तो हमारे जहन में हैं, which we will debate in a while. Badi Sahab, I'm coming back to you in Astana. You have been a distinguished, Pakistani who has been successful in setting up, ventures, financial centers outside. Now let me ask you a question. The countries like China and others, they have benefited from diaspora. Professionals living outside who have come back and contributed. और ना सिर्फ वो पैसे लाते हैं बल्कि वो प्रोफेशनल एडवाइस भी लाते हैं. Now what has been your experience, with the community you deal with? Diaspora हमारा पाकिस्तान में क्यों नहीं invest कर पा रहा? और people like yourselves, do you really think if an opportunity is given in Pakistan, there is space for you to actually set up a financial center in Pakistan? Let me be very straight.
Thank you, Harun Saab. So, I mean, just primarily, I mean, from this perspective, I mean, एक चीज जो पहले मैं बताना चाहता था कि I think there's this tremendous amount of support for Pakistan in a lot of its diaspora. That's given. They would, speak for Pakistan. They always reach out whenever, they feel that the tea leaves are right to help Pakistan out. And they do. But I think सबसे जो important चीज है कि they should not be seen as just sources of remittance and also basically source of hot money. There is so much more that they can do by way of institutional investments. They can actually not just see Pakistan as some place that they can, place money in debt instruments and take a quick return. But as a place where they can actually make value-adding investments as well. And I think many Pakistanis do. Unfortunately, they get stuck in the same myriad. I mean, very simple सी बात है. ज़्यादा, जो Pakistani diaspora जो export हुआ था, with time they have become foreign nationals of other countries. And when they become foreign nationals of other countries, I think very much they start, being as second-grade citizens of Pakistan. अगर आप उनमें से किसी को सिर्फ किसी बोर्ड पे अपॉइंट करने की कोशिश करें, so the security clearance process required to actually appoint someone who is now a foreign passport holder onto a board in Pakistan is quite significant. So of course, अगर वो investment करवा भी सकते हैं, but बाद में उस investment में कोई active role नहीं ले सकते या उनकी involvement जो है वो security clearances में stuck हो जाए. So they would be reluctant to do that. So I think primarily, that whole process of security clearance, not just from Pakistanis who wish to be on boards and then look after their investments in Pakistan, but also for foreign companies जो कि पाकिस्तान में invest करती हैं, कल को उनको boards पे रखा जा सकता है जो उनके shareholder representatives हैं. That is a big issue in Pakistan, and many people for that reason actually are swear away from investing in Pakistan. जहाँ तक सवाल है सर ये पाकिस्तान की काफी लोग मुझे कहते हैं कि जी FATF. Personally for me FATF is a हवा. It's escapism and excusism for a lot of people in Pakistan from saying कि जी पाकिस्तान में investment क्यों नहीं हो सकती. Yes, the last time I looked, Dubai a couple of years ago was on a European blacklist from tax purposes, and they were also on the grey list, and the FDI numbers have actually gone up this year in Dubai. So I don't buy that angle that sometimes say कि जी मतलब FATF की वजह से लोग नहीं जाते या उनसे घबरा जाते हैं. I think the support and everything is there, and there is a massive investor base in additional to institutional investors. जिनके अगर track clear हो investment का, तो they will definitely come and make a lot of investment, and that is a rather large pool of investments for Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Ishaq. I think again we need to think. This whole session is about thinking that why diaspora is not coming to Pakistan either with their professional competence or with money, and that is something we haven't tapped. Now, since we are short of time, I will go back to Khalid Mansoor for a very quick 2 minutes. Your take on Gwadar, that how is it shaping up or not shaping up as an investment place for Balochistan.
Will do.
Just 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Please.
thank you. पहली चीज़ तो ये थी कि पहले आपको ये समझना है कि why CPEC. देखें, I have been part of the framework building. तो जो One Belt One Road का initiative है, that is a long ancient desire of China. और उनसे उनकी economy की long term sustainability है from western part of China through Gwadar. That's the reason connectivity. तो इसीलिए वो CPEC को कहते हैं इट्स अ फ्लैगशिप प्रोजेक्ट ऑफ वन बेल्ट वन रोड इनिशिएटिव ऑफ शी जिनपिंग. गवादर को they call it's a jewel in the crown, because if the trade of China is going to be shifting from eastern part to the western part all the way through Gwadar, that is where they want connectivity with Europe, Africa, Middle East, so on and so forth. During my time देखें जो मेन चीज़ है कि इस वक्त फ्री जोन है, पहले वो 60 acres का फ्री जोन था और 46 enterprises have already established their businesses. 12-13 are already up and running and other are coming. There was a need felt by a lot of interest. उसके बाद जो second free zone है, that is 2200 acres, 37 times bigger than that. That is where इंशाल्लाह, क्योंकि CPEC जो है वो 2030 तक चलेगा. अभी phase 1 हुआ है, phase 2 होना है, अभी phase 3 भी होना है. So once that is done, you need that kind of land, or वो free zone है, fiscal incentive and so on and so forth. Now what has been done so far? सबसे बड़ा issue जो गवादर का था वो ये था, मैंने interacted with the people, and it was this kind of town hall. तो उसके अंदर उन्होंने कहा कि जी कि गवादर के अंदर इतनी मेजर इन्वेस्टमेंट हो रही है, लेकिन हमारे बुनियादी जो मसाइल हैं वो क्या हैं कि ना हमें पानी मिल रहा है, ना हमारे पास बिजली है, and so on and so forth. बिजली का जहाँ तक ताल्लुक है कि इस वक्त तक गवादर को नेशनल ग्रिड से कनेक्ट नहीं किया गया था. अब वो प्रोजेक्ट जो है वो बिल्कुल आखिरी मराहिल में है और 132 kV की ट्रांसमिशन लाइन इज गोइंग टू कम टू गवादर. गवादर में इस वक्त बिजली कहाँ से आती है? इट कम्स फ्रॉम द ईरान. कोई 120 मेगावाट का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, लेकिन जिस वक्त ईरान की अपनी रिक्वायरमेंट बढ़ती है तो उसके अंदर कर्टेलमेंट शुरू होती है. दैट्स वाई 16 to 18 आवर्स ऑफ लोड शेडिंग. अब वहाँ पर गवादर ईरान के साथ एग्रीमेंट फाइनल हुए और उन्होंने कहा कि थ्रू अनदर पार्ट वो 100 मेगावाट देंगे एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. लोगों की इमीडिएट मसाइल हल करने के लिए वी वेंट टू चाइनीज एम्बेसी और उनको बताया कि जब तक एंगेजमेंट लोगों की नहीं होती है, दे शुड फील कि इतना बड़ा मेगा $1 बिलियन के प्रोजेक्ट्स हो रहे हैं लेकिन उनके फंडामेंटल मसाइल हल नहीं हो रहे. तो चाइना ने डोनेट किए 3500 सोलर पैनल. बट द मेन क्वेश्चन वाज कि अगर आप उसको ट्रांसपेरेंटली इंस्टॉल करेंगे तो देयर वाज एन एग्रीमेंट कि हाउ दे आर गोइंग टू बी इम्प्लीमेंटेड. तो एक वर्किंग फोरम बनाया गया जिसके अंदर पाकिस्तान आर्मी थी, जिसके अंदर लोकल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन थी, जिसके अंदर और नेवी के भी लोग थे बिकॉज दे प्रोवाइड द सिक्योरिटी. और उसके बाद देयर वर 2 मेजर रूफटॉप सोलर कंपनीज. उनको कहा एज पार्ट ऑफ देयर CSR वो आकर इनको प्रो बोनो इंस्टॉल करें. तो आई एम हैप्पी टू रिपोर्ट कि वो प्रोजेक्ट माशाल्लाह इतनी ट्रांसपेरेंसी के साथ और इतनी एक्सपीडिशनली चला कि ऑल द 3500 लोग पैनल्स हैव बीन इंस्टॉल्ड ऑन द रूफ्स ऑफ दोज पुअर फिशरमैन. इस सक्सेस के बाद आई वाज जस्ट मेंशनिंग लास्ट इवनिंग दैट रिसीव्ड ए मैसेज फ्रॉम द एम्बेसडर कि दे वुड लाइक टू नाउ डोनेट 3500 मोर. तो ये इनकी शॉर्ट टर्म हो जाएगी और लॉन्ग टर्म ये होगी. पानी का जहाँ तक ताल्लुक है, प्रोजेक्ट वो भी डोनेशन पे था चाइना से. इट वाज सिटिंग इन मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ प्लानिंग फॉर इयर्स. तो 1.2 मिलियन गैलन्स का जो पानी है, इट इज गोइंग टू बी सी वाटर रिवर्स ऑस्मोसिस. समंदर से पानी लेंगे और पीने का पानी बनाएंगे. वो अगले 3 महीने के अंदर कमीशन होने जा रहा है. जो आपका अपना पानी है स्वाट डैम एंड शादी डैम से, उसके अंदर कनेक्टिविटी गवादर के बैटरी लिमिट तक हो चुकी है. मेन मसला ये था कि डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम आपका अंडर साइज था, तो उसको भी अपग्रेड कर दिया गया है. अब वहां पर जो लोग किसी भी गलियों के एंड के घरों में रहते हैं उनको भी पानी की तरसील शुरू हो जाएगी. 2 more थिंग्स. देखिए इस वक्त सबसे बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी है, एंड दैट इज वेरी क्लोज टू माय हार्ट, कि स्टेट ऑफ द आर्ट टेक्निकल इंस्टीट्यूट चाइना की मदद से बना है और वहां पर मल्टी स्किल्ड लोगों की रिक्वायरमेंट होगी। और वो रिक्वायरमेंट कहां से आएगी? जो मैंने आपको बताया कि 60 एकड़ और 2200 एकड़, वहां पे जब इंडस्ट्री लगेगी तो इंडस्ट्री स्पेसिफिक एक्सपर्टीज चाहिए। तो वो यूथ के लिए एक बहुत बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी है अगर उसको प्रॉपरली मैनेज कर दिया गया तो इंशाल्लाह ताला I have lot of hopes कि youth are going to be getting huge opportunity for their development and also employment. Lastly, एयरपोर्ट बन रहा है $250 मिलियन का, वो अगले साल कमीशन होने जा रहा है। जब इतना बड़ा एयरपोर्ट which is going to be biggest in this country, तो that is going to be creating number of job opportunities for the local. और similarly जो हॉस्पिटल है वो अब इंडस हॉस्पिटल के तवस्सुत से उसकी ऑपरेशन होगा और तकरीबन 150 बेड का हॉस्पिटल होगा, चाइना की वो भी ग्रांट से लग रहा है, एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ। फाइनल कमेंट ऑन दैट वन, फाइनल कमेंट बिकॉज देखिए इस वक्त जो बात होती है कि चाइना के अंदर जो वहां पर एक कंपनी है जिसको आपने गवादर पोर्ट का ऑपरेशन दिया है, उसके अंदर हमने ये देखा कि लिमिटेशन ये थी कि दे हैव नॉट रियली डेवलप्ड द यूनिक सेलिंग प्रोपोजिशन ऑफ गवादर। व्हाई द बिजनेस शुड कम फ्रॉम मिडिल ईस्ट टू गवादर, बिकॉज दैट्स द बिगेस्ट चैलेंज। और दूसरा उनका कोई मार्केटिंग प्लान भी इतना सॉलिड नहीं था। और व्हाट आई बिलीव कि विद दोज काइंड ऑफ इनिशिएटिव्स बाय मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ मैरीटाइम अफेयर्स एंड चाइना, अगर इसको प्रॉपर्ली मार्केट किया जाए तो वेरी क्विकली द बिजनेस शुड बी शिफ्टिंग from Middle East to Gwadar.
Thank you very much for explaining. I would like to open the floor. We have time for 8 to 10 questions. We'll take 2 sets. अपने आप को please introduce yourself. बताइए किन से panelist से सवाल है and be brief. So starting from here.
This is Gonzalo Varela from the World Bank. Very interesting session. Pakistan, if you compare Pakistan with the rest of the world is about 330 times larger than Pakistan's economy, right? So people talk about Pakistan being large, but the rest of
Can you speak a little louder?
The rest of the world is much larger. So it's likely that foreign investors have, there's a big opportunity there in attracting investment from foreign investors. Yet at passing, you mentioned, Harun, how it is difficult to repatriate profits. So thinking about the question of this session, that is why don't people invest in Pakistan? It seems that the answer perhaps is there because they cannot appropriate the returns of their investments. So thinking about that and thinking also about the fact that Pakistan has an investment law of 1976 that is extremely restrictive, that says foreign investors cannot come in sectors in which there is domestic investment, which basically means in all sectors. How do you think the enabling environment can be changed to attract more of this investment from the rest of the world that, again, represents 330 times the size of your economy?
Thank you. We'll take 2 more questions in this thing.
Myself, Mohammad Faraz. My question is that a country like Pakistan, with somehow having unfavorable international reputation for investment, we need to mobilize some critical mass of local investors to attract foreign investors. What have previous governments have done already to attract that critical mass from local investors? And how do you see current governments putting their efforts to mobilize that critical mass? And how do you see the prospects of these efforts? Thank you.
Dr. Saab. इधर दीजिएगा डॉक्टर नदीम को and then we'll take Yasir.
Why should anybody invest in Pakistan, including us? हम लोग तो इन्वेस्ट नहीं करना चाहते तो बाहर वाले कहां से आएंगे? ठीक है जी। मैं अभी मार्केट कैप्स देख रहा था एनग्रो के और लकी के, 2 of our biggest companies. Both are worth 150 billion rupees, which is about $600,000, $600 million. तो अगर 20, 30, 50 साल की सब्सिडी के बाद ये कंपनीज अभी तक सिर्फ 500 मिलियन की हुई हैं, 500, not even $1 billion, तो फिर हम क्या, I mean, really, what are we investing in? So the question to ask first is कि जी हम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर तो बनाते रहेंगे, चीनी से पैसे लेते रहेंगे, सब कुछ होता रहेगा, बट अगर हमारी बिजनेस नहीं ग्रो करी तो ये इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हम किस लिए बना रहे हैं? लेट्स स्टॉप मेकिंग द इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, लोन ले लेके हम पागल हो गए। सीपेक का पहला, आपने कहा खालिद साहब के सीपेक का पहला फेज खत्म हो गया, $25 बिलियन मुल्क में आ गए, वो कहाँ गए? डू वी हैव एनी रिटर्न ऑन दैट इन्वेस्टमेंट, या वो हमें अब लोन पे की शक्ल में नजर आ रहा है?
जी यासिर, रेलेवेंट क्वेश्चन, मैं फोर्थ ले लूं, आई विल कम फॉर द सेकंड राउंड इसके बाद। जी यासिर, वेरी क्विकली।
जी थैंक यू। ज़्यादातर हमारी जो फॉरेन डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट्स भी आती हैं वो ऐसे सेक्टर्स में आती हैं जो कि लोकल डिमांड को सर्व कर रही होती हैं। देयर इज़ नथिंग मच कि जहाँ पे हम, बिकॉज वन ऑफ आवर मेजर इशू इज़ बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट, सो अगर हम और रिपैट्रिएट ही कर रहे हैं डॉलर्स, बजाय ये कि हम कुछ एक्सपोर्ट करके और कमाएं। एंड आई थिंक जो एक और चीज़ डिस्कस करने के लिए वो हमारे ईज़ ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस है। सो आई थिंक अगर इस पे भी कुछ बात।
We got 4 questions. I think हमारे जो panelists हैं, anybody wants to start?
Let me,
आप कीजिए।
okay, let me put this in perspective. In 2007 and 2008 and 2008 and 2006 and 7, Pakistan received $5 billion of foreign direct investment, when India received $12 billion. And the size of Indian economy at that time was 6 times Pakistani economy. Why was it happening? There was a consistency, predictability of economic policies. There was a quick repatriation of royalty, of dividends, of the profits and the interest, because we had built up $16 billion of reserves. And multinational companies from all over the world were investing in Pakistan at that time. Today, India is attracting $81 billion, while we are attracting less than $2 billion. So you have to compare the enabling environment where the investor is not sure whether he will get the return. At that time, the rupee was stable at 60 rupees to a dollar, so the dollar returns and the rupee dollars are equivalent. Today, somebody who had invested at 100 rupees a dollar, what is his return at 220 rupees? So macroeconomic stability, enabling environment, predictability and consistency of policies, ease of repatriation of the profits, this are the ingredients why you can attract. If all of them are absent, I don't think even the local investors will come in, because they do not know what is going to happen tomorrow, whether they will get the return, opportunity cost of capital. In today's world, 100 countries are competing with each other. Why should they come and put their money here? Because there is no guarantee that they will even be able to get their LCs confirmed because of the macroeconomic stability. So I think we have to take a holistic picture of that rather than taking a very partial picture and say one factor or the other. And this goes along the entire horizon of the investment, not only just domestic, but both the foreign and domestic. We have to treat them equally. If we treat the domestic investors, give them some preferences, and we don't have a level playing field, forget about the foreign direct investment.
Maheen, if I could come to you for the first question about the restrictive, laws and the enabling environment and returns on investment as compared to our competitors. Your comment, please.
Sure, thank you. I think Dr. Ishrat has answered all those questions that have been put forward with his statement. The reality is that without any long-term policy vision, it is incredibly hard for an investor to have any idea in terms of where their investment will go. And perhaps nowhere is this more stark than the tax laws of Pakistan. Tax, in my view, is very convoluted. It is designed to be, penalty focused rather than incentive focused. And because it is prone to changing every fiscal year with the annual budget, it can overnight turn some industries from being viable to being unviable. So in my view, not only does the overall consistency of policy have to be in place, but the taxation that is accorded to any particular industry or new setup needs to be crystal clear. Because without that visibility, as an investor, it is impossible to make a decision that is a a long-term decision, which is not just 10 years or 20 years. It can be almost up to 50, 60 years. So that vision is very needed. I think the key reason why investors did come to Pakistan in the past as well is because it is a large market. It is a market of 200 million plus people. It has a strong consumer base, and the companies that have been here and made that investment, whether they were foreign or local, they have actually made a tremendous amount of profit over this time period. You can talk about Nestle, you can talk about Unilever, you can talk about Engro, you can talk about all these companies that began their investment cycle and process or decades ago, almost 40, 50 years ago, are today have managed to weather the storms. But at the same time, we have not managed to gather new entrants into these markets. And again, that is because there is a constant about U-turn on the policy side, which hence makes it difficult for anyone to take that bet on Pakistan.
Policy
so
consistency comes as the major factor.
FBR.
Yes, absolutely.
The FBRB, taxation, policy consistency. Before I come to you, Khalid, for this Angro question, why companies are not growing in infrastructure, I will have very quick word from Ishaq Barni. You basically sit in financial centers. So, aajkal in Asia, which are the 2-3 destinations where global investors are going? So that, we should learn from them.
Vietnam, Cambodia.
So, Ishrat Saab sahi keh rahe hain, that's Vietnam, Cambodia, but Ishrat Saab sahi keh rahe hain, that's Vietnam, Cambodia, but I think Central Asia is perhaps another area where, by and large, there's a lot of people who are not aware of, the relative position of this. I mean, they have big logistical challenges for, I think, something that Pakistan can really help out in terms of, resolving some of their logistical challenges. एक और चीज सर मैं actually the second question that was asked today, अगर आप इजाजत दें, very quickly I wanted to comment on that. I mean, there's many things that people can do. For example, when you worked on the ease of doing business index, etc., to grow that. But indices से ज़्यादा Pakistan का ज़्यादा बड़ा problem, as someone who used to work very, very closely, as you know, with the sovereign wealth fund in committing $2 billion to investing in Pakistan. लोगों को फंडामेंटल फियर पाकिस्तान का ये नहीं है कि मार्केट छोटी है या ग्रो नहीं करेगी. उनका सबसे बड़ा फियर है कि पाकिस्तान इन्वेस्टमेंट करने ही नहीं देगा. रिटर्न तो बहुत दूर की बात है, पैसे वापस ले जाना वो तो बाद की बात है. फंडामेंटली पीपल बिलीव कि पाकिस्तान में इन्वेस्टमेंट आपको करने ही नहीं देंगे. एंड आई थिंक इन दैट सेंस थिंग्स लाइक सॉवरेनिटी, नेशनल सिक्योरिटी एंड पाकिस्तान की रेंट सीकिंग एक्टिविटीज जो हैं, इनका सबको पता भी है, मगर और ये और कंट्रीज में भी एग्जिस्ट करती हैं. बट परहैप्स फॉर अ टाइम इट वुडंट हर्ट कि पाकिस्तान टू पुट दोज ऑन on important scale, but slightly on the secondary thought process, because
straightforward from somebody who is seeing the global investors, that they look at Pakistan, that the country creates hurdles. It's a mindset, it's the rent seeking, it's the policy gaps. So I think we need to be realistic. अपने आप से सच बोलना चाहिए and try and find a remedy to that. बजाय इसके कि हम एक perpetual denial में बताते रहें कि जी हम बहुत अच्छे हैं और बहुत opportunity है. Khalsa, 1 minute on Angro और उसके अंदर why, as Dr. Nadeem said, the market cap is not big enough when you look at around, in the world. We keep on, saying कि बहुत अच्छी कंपनी है, लेकिन जब आप comparison करते हैं साउथ एशिया से भी, तो छोटी कंपनी है आपकी. What's the issue?
जी डॉक्टर साहब, Angro is my older company. अब आप ये देखिए कि मुल्क के अंदर एनर्जी का क्राइसिस था. जो इंडिजिनस गैस है, इट वाज dwindling. Government of Pakistan approached Angro because of its strength, financial and technical, कि आप RLNG मुल्क के अंदर लेकर आए, right? Investment was done. IFC has invested in that one, World Bank, so on and so forth. और मैं अपने वसूख से, based on my expertise in energy sector, कि अगर RLNG मुल्क में नहीं आती तो you would have even worse crisis of the gas. ये सब कुछ जब हो गया तो the chairman of the company was then called by NAB. और उसके बाद इतना स्ट्रेस था पूरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के ऊपर they have done something for the national interest. And NAB is being, grabbed, reputation loss and so on and so forth. تو اب آپ مجھے بتائیے کہ اس قسم کے environment کے اندر big companies, they will think thrice if there is going to be something of the net. Number one.
Fair point.
دوسرا جو infrastructure کے اوپر جو ہے ہارون, because that is the lifeline for the country. تھر کی continuous expansion چل رہی ہے, اور تھر کے اندر اب جو next phase ہے, I'm repeating again and again, that is the coal gasification, کیونکہ $25 billion کا جو import bill ہے, اس کی substitution کہاں سے آئے گی؟ کہ you have to have the gas gasification and then produce. ڈاکٹر صاحب آپ کے سوال کا جواب, جب تک یہ نہیں, یہ سوال ایک اور تھا کہ یہ جو آپ نے اتنی انویسٹمنٹ کر دی اس کا ریٹرن آ رہے ہیں نہیں. ڈاکٹر صاحب دیکھیے, جس وقت سی پیک نہیں لگا تھا 38% پاور جنریشن واز بیسڈ آن امپورٹڈ فیول وچ از فرنس آئل, وچ از دا موسٹ ایکسپینسو چوائس آف فیول. اب جب یہ انویسٹمنٹ آئی ہے, آپ دیکھیں انویسٹمنٹ کس میں آئی ہے, انویسٹمنٹ تھر میں آئی ہے. تھر از دا انڈیجنس کول, اور اس کی جو fuel cost component is 1/4 compared to the furnace oil. اس کے بعد renewable projects آئے, اس کی وجہ سے جو ایوریج ٹیرف ہے ملک کا وہ ریڈیوس ہوا ہے, اور جو انڈسٹری بند ہو گئی تھی particularly in فیصل آباد میں, they started to operate and they have earned the historical best profits when the power crisis were not there. تو سر بات ساری یہ ہے کہ مین مسئلہ یہ ہے کہ ہمیں جس وقت پاور ڈیمانڈ آتی ہے نا, تو مسئلہ یہ ہے کہ گرمیوں کے اندر ہمارے پاس پاور نہیں ہوتی, اور سردیوں کے اندر کیا ہوتا ہے کہ کیونکہ انڈسٹری نہیں ہے اور جو آپ کا ڈومیسٹک لوگ کم ہو جاتا ہے, تو ہم کہتے ہیں کہ پاور ہماری جاتا ہے.
Let's take a set of 4 more questions. Let me say somebody in the back, the lady in the back.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I just want to ask that we are only stuck in the if and buts. Is this all discussion is about the high level, but if I just talk about the micro level, as being the student or citizen of this country, we're only stuck in the if and buts. Like we have talked about the less employment, less investment, less productivity level. So why do we always talk about the problems? Why there isn't any solution for that? There was told by somebody about middle under employment, such kind of like that. So we are only talking about the opportunities, but there isn't any ladder how to build in that.
We got it. We come back to this, Dr. Ishrat. Let me take 2 more from the back. ایک اور پیچھے سے اس سائڈ سے. جی آپ بتائیے.
سر میرا کوشچن یہ ہے کہ پاکستان ایک ایگریکلچرل کنٹری ہے, اور ہماری تقریباً 40% جو وہ ایگریکلچر میں ایکسپرٹ ہے, یا ان کے پاس ایگریکلچرل ایکسپرٹیز ہے, لیکن ہماری گورنمنٹ ہر ٹائم جو ہے وہ صرف انڈسٹریز کی طرف فوکس کری. جیسے کہ ابھی سر نے کہا ہے کہ 200 ایکڑ ہم نے فری زون دے دیا گوادر میں, اور اس طرح.
جی بالکل سمجھ آ گیا, اس پہ ہم آپ کو بھی کامنٹ دیتے ہیں.
تھینک یو سر.
جی آپ کا سوال بہت اچھا سوال ہے ویسے بائی دا وے آپ کا. یہ 2 سوال ہیں جی آپ کے, اور
سیکنڈ رو میں جو
سیکنڈ رو میں صاحب, اور پھر وہ.
ریسنٹلی میں نے ایک پی ایچ ڈی تھیسس جو گوادر پہ تھا اس کو ایویلویٹ کیا, تو اس میں بلوچستان کو اور سنتیانگ صوبے کو کمپیئر کیا گیا تھا, اور یہ بتایا گیا تھا کہ سی پیک جو ہے یہ چائنا کی گو ویسٹ پالیسی ہے. ویسٹ میں جو ایریاز رہ گئے تھے ڈیولپمنٹ ریس میں, دیٹ واز فار دیٹ پرپز. تو چائنا نے کیا سیپریٹسٹ موومنٹ کو سنتیانگ میں ختم کرنے کے لیے اکنامک پیکیجز آفر کیے. میں
جی پلیز کیری آن, جلدی سے سوال اپنا اگر کہیں.
جی میں یہ چاہ رہا ہوں کہ کیا یہ نہیں ہو سکتا کہ پاکستان گورنمنٹ اسی چائنیز پالیسی کو ایڈاپٹ کرتے ہوئے اکنامک پیکیجز بلوچستان میں آفر کرے. تھینک یو.
ڈاکٹر عمران دورانی, میرا کوشچن یہ ہے آپ سے کہ جتنے ایئرس کی ہم نے بات کی ہے, اس میں ہم نے وار میں کتنا ٹائم پاس کیا ہے. تو جب تک پاکستان کے اگر آپ انڈیکس میں دیکھیں تو پاکستان کی جو سیکیورٹی لیول ہے وہ 2nd لاسٹ پہ ہے یا 3rd لاسٹ پہ ہے. کیا اس سیکیورٹی لیول پہ کوئی بھی انویسٹر باہر سے آئے اور انویسٹ کرے؟
فیئر پوائنٹ.
ہم نے کبھی بھی بات نہیں کی ریجنل اسٹرینتھنگ کی. افغانستان, ایران, انڈیا, وی آر الون ان دس ایریا. ٹھیک ہے, بنگلہ دیش ہم سے آگے نکل گیا, انڈیا ہم سے آگے نکل گیا, ایون افغانستان ابھی ہم سے آگے نکل جائے گا, بلکہ نکل چکا ہے. ہم ابھی تک اپنی بیوروکریسی کو رو رہے ہیں, सर
जी अगर आप क्विकली इसको
क्विकली मेरा जो आपसे है, हमने जितनी भी मैंने डिस्कशन सुनी है अभी तक, कल से लेकर अभी तक, उसमें हम उसी पुराने पैटर्न को अभी तक रो रहे हैं. Why don't we take quick actions? What the think tank is doing, what the ministries are doing.
ठीक है जी, नोट. लास्ट क्वेश्चन जी आपका, देन आई विल क्लोज. वन पर्सन जी फ्रॉम हियर, यू कैन टॉस, और प्लीज आपने ये 30 सेकंड में पूछना है.
मेरा क्वेश्चन है कि जिस तरह सर ने कहा है कि चाइना हमें 3,003 बिलियन डॉलर्स मतलब पैनल से डोनेट कर रहा है, तो मैं समझता हूँ थर पारकर में थर कोल इतना बड़ा कोल पड़ा है जो हमारा इलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्रॉब्लम ख़त्म कर सकता है, जिसकी वजह से भी इन्वेस्टर नहीं हमारे पास इन्वेस्ट करता. तो क्या हम वो डोनेट करने के बजाय हम कहें कि भाई डोनेट ना करो, आओ इन्वेस्ट करो और हमें इलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्रॉब्लम से बाहर निकालो.
ठीक है जी, इसका वी रिस्पॉन्ड टू दैट. देखिए देयर आर लॉट्स ऑफ क्वेश्चंस, आई एम रियली प्लीज्ड, लेकिन अब हमारे पास टाइम कम है. I would like Dr. Ishrat to give concluding remarks, including covering Yasser आपका सवाल on productive sectors, and then we'll. Let me just go back to the question on agriculture versus industry. Khalid.
लड़के का भी के थर में हो रहा है.
जब बच्चा देखो ऐसा है कि एग्रीकल्चर सबसे ज़्यादा सैड स्टोरी है इस मुल्क की, और आपने बिल्कुल कहा कि 80% हमारी इकोनॉमी शुड बी डिपेंडेंट, और इसके अंदर जो भी पैरामीटर्स होते हैं कि जिसकी बेस पे वी शुड बी एक्सपोर्टिंग, तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली वो नहीं हो रहा था. तो दैट्स वाई ये लेटेस्ट जो जॉइंट वर्किंग ग्रुप जो CPEC का बना है, दैट इज़ ऑन एग्रीकल्चर. तो 9 महीने जब मैं व्हेन आई वाज हेडिंग CPEC, तो उसके अंदर लॉट ऑफ एंगेजमेंट हैज़ बीन डन, और वो प्रोजेक्ट सारे आइडेंटिफाई किए जिसकी बेस के ऊपर पाकिस्तान की जो फंडामेंटल प्रॉब्लम है एग्रीकल्चर की वो रिजॉल्व हो सके.
आपको एग्जांपल देना पड़ेगा.
प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि हमारे पास जो सीड है उसकी क्वालिटी बेहतर नहीं है, इसकी वजह से हमारी ईल्ड जो है वो कम से कमतर होती चली जा रही है. इसके अलावा हमारे पास मैकेनाइज्ड एग्रीकल्चर नहीं है, तो उसकी वजह से डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन सेंटर्स उनके साथ एग्री हुए कि वो आकर जो मैकेनाइज आपकी फार्मिंग होती है वो इंट्रोड्यूस करेंगे एंड सो ऑन. लास्टली इस सारी रिसर्च के अंदर जो सबसे बड़ा पॉजिटिव पॉइंट था वो ये था कि जो बलूचिस्तान के अंदर मिरानी डैम का एरिया है, 100,000 एकड़ ऑफ लैंड, वाटर इज अवेलेबल, तो दैट इज गोइंग टू बी प्रोवाइडिंग लॉट ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटी. जहाँ तक थर का ताल्लुक है जी, थर के अंदर जो इन्वेस्टमेंट है जो आती है ना, वो लॉन्ग टर्म होगी अब, जिसके अंदर उसकी गैसिफिकेशन है और गैस से रिलेटेड जितने प्रोजेक्ट हैं. ये एक शॉर्ट टर्म फिक्स है कि जिन बेचारों को बिजली नहीं मिलती फंडामेंटल रिक्वायरमेंट के लिए, तो ये सोलर पैनल जो है उससे उनकी ज़रूरियात जल्द से जल्द हल हो सकती.
Thank you very much, and with that, I will request Dr. Ishrat Hussain to try and answer your questions and also conclude the discussion. And I will also comment that PIDE should adopt a consistency ki policy. That's why investment doesn't come. You keep on changing the time.
Goalposts.
So please, over to you.
Let me first of all thank the panelists and also the audience for their participation in this session. The questions were really very pointed and relevant. Let me begin because I see a lot of young people, so I get inspired by them. Let me start by saying, what is our worldview? Is it that we want to be integrated with the world economy? Do we want to liberalize our trade and participate like other countries are doing? Do we want to attract financial flows? Do we want to adopt technology in this country as the engines of growth for the future? Or do we want to remain insular, inward-looking, that anything foreign is anathema for us? They are all here for exploitation. They are here for making use of our resources and getting out of it. So you have to decide that as the fundamental question for the future direction of this country. I have worked on 50 countries in the world, and except North Korea and Myanmar, which is now opening up, and Cuba, which are opening up, most of the countries, even in Africa, have decided deliberately that they would gain a great deal by being part of the global economy rather than looking inwards. Yours is a $300 billion economy. The world economy is $30 trillion economy. Just 1% of the market share of even China's export market will bring you as much as $30 billion. Just 1%. That is the strength why China grew. They have a $1.4 billion market size, but they didn't content on that. They have now become the world's largest economy, and that's why they have grown by such a large, I would say unprecedented degree that they were able to bring their country from $100 in 1980 to $10,000 today. That is the story why China has increased. They are now receiving $160 billion of foreign direct investments. They are absorbing the technology by sending the best students to the top universities of the United States in engineering, science, and mathematics, and they come back and they establish those labs and transfer the technology, which is then used in the production process. That is the fundamental question we have to decide. And that's for the younger generation. If you want to remain within your own fields, country, ostracized, oblivious of what is happening in the rest of the world, our future, in my view, is going to be very bleak. We have now been left behind. India and Bangladesh, both were way behind us in 1990. This Indian rate of growth was 3%, and ours was 66%, and Bangladesh was not even in counting. And both of them now have per capita incomes which are 80% and 65% higher than Pakistan. These are the choices and these are the options. So we have a fundamental decision to take. It's not going to be taken by politicians. It is not taken by anybody else, by us as a society. It is our responsibility to make that choice. Once you have made that choice, then the direction is very clear. You want to be a Vietnam, or you want to remain Pakistan, which is going back. And that is why we have to transform. We don't have to reform anymore. We have to transform our entire ecosystem in order to encourage integration with the rest of the world. You heard the panelist, and you heard Mr. Nadeem ul-Haq this morning. Our difficulty is that we are running a 21st century economy with the arms and ammunitions of the 19th century. We have inherited a colonial system of administration, which is totally irrelevant in today's world. That's why the implementation and execution of CPEC, of the foreign direct investment, of the offers from Qatar and Saudi Arabia are not fulfilled. And that is where our capacity is, that we are become process-oriented bureaucracy rather than performance-oriented bureaucracy. People say in the civil service, has anybody been taken to task for an act of omission? But they have been taken to task for act of commission. So why do you take decisions? Why do you make any commitments about taking this forward? If that is the mentality, then you are doomed. What is the solution? A young girl's Digitalization, automation, and computerization of all the business processes of the government are the way forward. It will bring transparency, it will bring efficiency, and it will bring accountability. And I give you one simple example which will illustrate the power of automation. The export refunds by FBR were stuck for years altogether. And at every stage, the exporter had to pay under the table in order to get from one table to another. Even to receive the check, they have to pay 3% just to take their check. 3 years ago, FBR switched over to a end-to-end solution where you upload your claims with supporting documents, and through the AI, the documents are processed, and if all the documents are in order and your claim is verified, then the amount is transferred automatically to your bank account. There is no interaction between a tax official and the taxpayer. And the refunds were processed and paid in 72 hours. This is the power, how the corruption, how the leakages, how the inefficiencies can be removed. But there is a resistance, I can tell you, towards opening up. Just the simple fact that I wanted the websites of the ministries to have all the laws, rules, regulations, because nobody knows what the regulations and what the rules are. And there was nobody prepared to even upload those rules and regulations. Because when you have opacity, you can take discretionary decisions. You can take arbitrary decisions and you won't be held accountable. And that is where the problem lies. So all the panelists pointed out that we are lacking in execution and we're missing the opportunity. The solution, and you are all students of this university whose name is Balochistan University of Information Technology. We have to start right from school, science, technology, engineering, creative arts, and mathematics, right from the school, and that is the future which will take us there. So thank you very much again for your participation, but it is your decision which direction you want to take this car.
Thank you very much, and thanks to the panelists who joined us virtually, Ms. Maheen Rahman and Mr. Ishaq Birni, and grateful to Mr. Khalid Mansoor. I understand number of questions could not be answered, but we are here, so we can actually do in conversation. Thank you very much.